I remember the exact moment I realized I had been erased. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late September, and the sun was hitting my kitchen counter at that perfect angle that makes everything look golden and warm. I was chopping vegetables for a salad when my phone buzzed with a text from my little sister, Chloe. She sent a photo of a house, a beautiful house, white siding with black shutters and a wraparound porch and a swing that looked like it belonged on a postcard. The kind of house we used to drive past when we were kids, and I would press my face against the car window and whisper, "Someday." Chloe's text said, "Guess what Mom is giving us as a wedding gift?" My hands went cold around the knife. I stared at those words for a full minute before my brain could even process what I was seeing. Mom was giving them the house. Not just any house. The house on Maple Street. The house I had spent 3 years of my life renovating. The house I had poured my savings into when Mom couldn't afford the property taxes after Dad left. The house where I lived alone for 2 years, nursing her through her depression and her drinking, and her endless silent crying fits in the dark living room. That house. I set the knife down and leaned against the counter. My knees felt strange, like they might forget how to hold me up. Chloe didn't even call. She sent a photo with a text like she was telling me about a sale at Target. I scrolled up to see our last few conversations.
Mostly her asking me for money or advice or a ride somewhere. Nothing about the house. Nothing about a wedding gift. Nothing about me. Let me go back to the beginning, because this didn't start in September. This started years ago. I am 31 years old. My sister Chloe is 27. We grew up in a small suburb outside of Richmond, Virginia. Our dad was a contractor, and our mom was a stay-at-home mom who painted watercolors in her free time. When I was 16, my dad walked out, just left one morning with a packed suitcase and said he couldn't do it anymore. No fight the night before, no warning signs that I could see. He kissed my forehead, told me to be good, and walked out the door. Mom shattered. She didn't just cry. She disappeared into herself. For 6 months, she barely left her bedroom. I took over everything. I made sure Chloe got to school. I made dinner. I did laundry. I paid bills with the small amount of money Dad left in the joint account before he drained it. I lied to teachers about why my homework was late. I told Chloe that Mom was just tired, just sick, just needed rest. I was 16 years old, and I became the mother in that house. Chloe was 12. She didn't understand. She just knew that Mom wasn't there anymore, and that I was always stressed, and that her life had become quiet and gray. I don't blame her for being 12, but I do blame her for never seeing what I gave up. I gave up my junior year prom because Mom had a breakdown the same night, and I couldn't leave her alone. I gave up applying to my dream college because someone had to stay close. I gave up a scholarship offer from a school 4 hours away because Chloe was struggling in middle school and Mom was still drinking too much wine every night. I stayed. I went to the local community college while working 40 hours a week at a coffee shop. I transferred to the state university, but only because it was 30 minutes away. I never lived in a dorm. I never had the experience of being young and stupid and free. I came home every night to check on Mom and make sure Chloe had done her homework. After college, I got a decent job at a marketing firm in Richmond. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me enough to start saving. Mom had lost the house on Maple Street by then. Well, not lost exactly. She couldn't afford the payments after Dad left, and she had refinanced twice. She was going to lose it for real. So I stepped in. I was 23 years old with $20,000 saved, and I handed every penny to my mother. I told her I would help her keep the house. I moved back in. I paid the mortgage for 2 years while she slowly pieced herself back together. I painted every room. I ripped up the old carpet in the living room and refinished the hardwood floors underneath. I replaced the kitchen countertops with butcher block I bought on clearance. I built that wraparound porch swing with my own hands from a YouTube tutorial. I planted roses along the walkway because Mom always said she wanted roses. I loved that house. Not because of the wood or the walls, but because I had fixed something broken. I had taken something falling apart and made it beautiful again. That was supposed to mean something. Chloe went to college during those years. She came home for breaks and complained about the noise of my power tools. She rolled her eyes at the paint samples taped to the walls. She told me I was being obsessive and that Mom should just sell the place and move into an apartment. I told her I was trying to save our home. She laughed. She actually laughed and said it was just a house.
To her, it was just a house. She had been spared from the worst of it. When Dad left, she was young enough that the school counselors circled her with pity and extra attention. She got to go on field trips and sleepovers, while I stayed home with our crying mother. She got to apply to colleges without worrying about tuition, because Mom had finally started working again, and I was the one signing up for student loans. Chloe went to a private university 3 hours away. She studied art history. She joined a sorority. She posted photos of pumpkin spice lattes and football games. I worked overtime shifts at the marketing firm and drove home to mow the lawn. I don't say any of this to make myself a saint. I say it because it matters.
I say it because when you give that much of yourself to people you love, you assume they see it. You assume they remember. You assume that one day when you need them, they will show up the way you showed up for them. That is a dangerous assumption. Chloe met Mark 3 years ago. Mark is fine. He works in finance, he wears expensive shoes, and talks about bourbon like it's a personality trait. He has a condo in the city, but Chloe wanted a house with a yard for the 2 dogs she insisted on getting. They looked at places for months. Nothing was good enough. Everything was either too small or too far or needed too much work. Chloe complained about it constantly at Sunday dinners. The market is impossible. Nothing is under $700,000. Why is everything so ugly? Mom listened with her patient smile. I listened with my mouth shut. I had bought my own small house 2 years earlier, a fixer-upper on the other side of town. Nothing special. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a yard that was mostly weeds. I was still paying off the debts from saving Maple Street. I was still digging myself out of the hole that love had put me in. Then Mom started talking about downsizing. Maple Street was too big for her now, she said. She was ready for something smaller, a condo maybe, something without stairs. She mentioned it casually at first, and then more often. I didn't think much of it. She had the right to sell her house. It was her house now.
I had given it back to her after she got on her feet. The deed was in her name. I had never asked for anything in return, but I assumed. I assumed that when she sold it, she would remember. I assumed she would offer me something, a portion of the proceeds, a thank you, a recognition that without me, that house would have been gone years ago. I didn't need much. Even a small gesture would have been enough. Just something that said, I see what you did. I didn't forget. The text from Chloe came 2 days after Mom had apparently made the decision. They were all in on it together, Mom and Chloe and Mark. They had talked about it for weeks without me. They had looked at numbers and signed papers and planned the announcement. Chloe's text was the announcement. That's how little I mattered to the process. A text message. I called Mom immediately. She answered on the 3rd ring, and her voice was light and cheerful, like nothing was wrong. I asked her if it was true. She said yes, with this little laugh. She said she wanted to give Chloe and Mark a real start, a family home, a place to raise children. She said she had already signed the transfer paperwork, and the wedding was in 6 weeks, so it was all perfect timing. I asked her, what about me? There was a pause, a real pause where I could hear her breathing. Then she said, what do you mean? I said, I lived in that house for 2 years as an adult. I paid the mortgage. I fixed everything. I put my savings into it. I kept it from being taken by the bank. I did all of that while you could barely get out of bed. She got quiet. Then she said, I know you helped, sweetheart, but that was years ago. You've moved on. You have your own house now. I said, that's not the point. She said, what is the point then? I didn't have an answer that wouldn't make me sound bitter or small, because the point was everything. The point was that I had spent my entire adult life putting my family first, and they had just given away the only physical proof of that sacrifice to someone who had never sacrificed a thing. The point was that Chloe was getting the house I rebuilt while she was at sorority formals. The point was that I was being erased from my own story. I hung up the phone and sat on my kitchen floor for a long time. My dog Luna came over and rested her head on my knee. I cried into her fur. Then I pulled myself together, because that's what I do. I've always pulled myself together. The next few weeks were strange. Mom acted like nothing had happened. She called to ask about my weekend plans and what I was bringing to Sunday dinner. Chloe sent me links to wedding registry items like I was supposed to be excited. Mark posted a photo of the house on Instagram with the caption, future home, and a ring emoji. 47 people liked it.
My phone felt like it was burning in my hand. I went to Sunday dinner the following week because skipping would have caused more drama than I had the energy for.
Mom made pot roast. Chloe showed me pictures of paint swatches for the guest bedroom. She asked my opinion on cabinet hardware. I had no idea how close I was to screaming. I smiled and nodded and said the brass pools would look nice. I excused myself to the bathroom and stood with my hands on the sink, staring at my own face in the mirror. I didn't recognize myself. Not because I looked different, but because I was so tired of being the person who just smiled and nodded. That night, I started making calls. I didn't even plan it. My fingers just started moving. I called my old real estate agent first, then a lawyer I had used for some contract work at my firm. Then I spent 3 hours pulling up bank records from years ago. Every payment I made toward the mortgage, every receipt for materials, every contractor invoice that I had paid myself. I had kept everything because I was terrified of being audited back then. I was 23 and paranoid. That paranoia was about to become a weapon. The lawyer's name is David. He's a quiet guy in his 50s who wears sweater vests and speaks very slowly. I met him at his office the next morning. I laid out the entire story, the years of caregiving, the mortgage payments, the renovations, the fact that my name was never on the deed because I was young and stupid and trusted my mother completely. David listened without interrupting. When I was done, he leaned back in his chair and said something I will never forget.
He said we might have a case for unjust enrichment. He said, Virginia law allows for recovery of value when someone has conferred a benefit on another under circumstances where it would be unfair for that person to keep the benefit without paying for it. I didn't understand half of what he said, but I understood the word recovery. I asked him what that meant in real terms. He said if we could prove the value of my contributions and show that I never intended them as a gift, then a court might order my mother to compensate me from the sale proceeds. But the house wasn't being sold. It was being gifted. That complicated things. He said the transfer could potentially be challenged if it was done to avoid a legitimate claim. He said we would need to move fast. I hired him that day. I gave him a $5,000 retainer that I had to put on a credit card. I told no one. Not my friends, not my coworkers, not the guy I had been casually dating who thought I was just going through a rough patch with my family. This was mine. This was the first thing I had ever done for myself that might hurt other people, and I was terrified. But I was also done being the one who got hurt. The next 6 weeks were a blur of emails and document gathering and strategy calls. David filed a notice of claim against the property. That meant the house couldn't be legally transferred to Chloe without addressing my claim. Mom got the notice. She called me screaming. I had never heard her scream before.
Not even in the worst days after Dad left. She screamed that I was destroying the family, that I was greedy, that I was punishing Chloe for no reason, that I should be ashamed. Chloe called next. She was crying. Real tears, not the performative kind. She said I was ruining her wedding. She said I was jealous of her happiness. She said I had always resented her for being younger and having more fun. She said I was a bitter, lonely person who couldn't stand to see anyone else get something good. That one hurt, not because it was true, but because it was the kind of thing you only say when you've been thinking it for a long time. Mark sent me a long text message full of legal threats and insults. He said he would bury me in court. He said his father knew judges. He said I was a pathetic woman who needed therapy. I screenshotted the message and sent it to David. David laughed and said that would look great in Discovery. My mother's brother, Uncle Greg, called me. He said Mom had been crying for 3 days straight. He said I needed to drop the claim and apologize. He said family was more important than money. I asked him where he was when I was 16 years old making dinner for Chloe while Mom drank herself to sleep. He got quiet. Then he said that was different. I asked how. He didn't have an answer. He said he hoped I would do the right thing and hung up. The right thing. Everyone kept telling me to do the right thing, but nobody could tell me why the right thing always meant me losing something. Thanksgiving came and went. I didn't go. I spent it alone with Luna and a frozen pizza and a bottle of wine. I watched old movies and tried not to think about the fact that my family was sitting around my mother's dining table eating the meal I usually helped prepare. My phone stayed silent. No one called to check on me. No one texted to say they missed me. That silence told me everything I needed to know about what I actually meant to them. The mediation was scheduled for the first week of December, 6 weeks before the wedding. David and I walked into a conference room downtown where my mother and Chloe and Mark were already sitting with their lawyer, a woman I didn't know. Sharp suit, sharp eyes. She looked at me like I was something unpleasant she had stepped in. Mom wouldn't look at me at all. Chloe stared at the table. Mark glared. The mediator was a retired judge named Hernandez. She had kind eyes and a firm voice. She explained the process and then let each side speak. Their lawyer went first. She argued that my contributions were gifts made freely out of love, and that I had no legal right to demand compensation years later. She said I was trying to extort my own family. She said the claim was frivolous and would be dismissed if we went to trial. Then it was my turn. David spoke quietly and clearly. He laid out the timeline, the mortgage payments, the renovations.
The fact that I had been a minor when I started caregiving, the fact that my mother had been unable to maintain the property on her own. He presented bank records and receipts and photographs. He argued that I had never intended to gift my life savings to my mother. I had intended to help her keep the house. That was different. Then Hernandez asked me to speak. She looked at me and said, "What do you want here? Not legally, personally. What do you want?" I looked at my mother. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Chloe. She was crying again, but quietly this time. I looked at Mark, who was staring at his phone like this was all beneath him. And I realized I didn't want the money. Not really. I wanted them to see me. I wanted them to acknowledge that I had given everything and gotten nothing. I wanted them to say thank you. But they wouldn't. They couldn't. Because saying thank you would mean admitting that I had done something worth thanking, and admitting that would force them to look at all the years they had looked away. I said, "I want what's fair." Hernandez nodded. She said, "That's reasonable." The negotiation took 7 hours. 7 hours of back and forth, of tears and accusations and whispered conversations in hallways, of Mark threatening to leave if Chloe didn't stand up to me, of my mother saying she couldn't believe I was doing this to her, of Chloe sobbing that I was ruining her wedding day. In the end, we reached an agreement.
My mother would pay me $75,000, half of what I had calculated with David. She would take out a home equity line of credit to do it because she didn't have that kind of cash. The house would still go to Chloe and Mark, but with a lien against it to secure my payment. I would drop the claim against the transfer. The wedding would proceed as planned. Everyone could go back to pretending. Mom signed the agreement without looking at me. Chloe signed it with shaking hands. I signed it and felt nothing. Not relief, not victory, just a hollow exhaustion that settled into my bones. The wedding was 3 weeks later. I wasn't invited. I found out through social media when Chloe posted a photo of her bridal party in matching silk robes. 10 women, none of them me. The caption said, "So blessed." I scrolled through the rest of the photos later that night. Mom in a champagne-colored dress, Mark's parents looking rich and pleased, Chloe walking down an aisle somewhere with flowers in her hair. The house on Maple Street wasn't in any of the photos, but I knew it was there. I knew Chloe would wake up in my bedrooms and cook in my kitchen and sit on the porch swing I built with my own hands. She would never think of me. She would never know how many hours I spent sanding that wood. The money came through a month after the wedding, $75,000, deposited into my checking account. I stared at the number for a long time. It didn't feel like mine.
It felt like blood money. Not because I had done anything wrong, but because of what it cost me to get it. My mother hasn't spoken to me since the mediation. Not one word. She blocked my number and my social media accounts. Chloe did the same. Mark sent me one final message that said, enjoy your blood money, and then blocked me too. My Uncle Greg calls every few weeks. He doesn't ask about the legal stuff anymore. He asks how I'm doing. He asks if I need anything. He's the only one who still talks to me from that side of the family. He told me last week that Mom sold her condo and moved to Florida. She's dating a retired dentist named Bob. She seems happy, he said. I told him I was glad. I meant it. I don't want her to be unhappy. I just wanted her to remember me. The house on Maple Street is still standing. I drove by it last month. Chloe had painted the shutters blue. The roses I planted were gone, replaced by some kind of ornamental grass. The porch swing was still there, though. I sat in my car for 20 minutes just looking at it. I thought about the summer afternoon I hung that swing. I had borrowed a neighbor's drill and watched the YouTube tutorial 6 times. My hands bled from the sandpaper. I was so proud when it was finished. I called Chloe to tell her, and she said, "Cool," and then asked me to Venmo her $20 for pizza. That's the thing about giving everything to people who don't notice. You don't just lose your money or your time.
You lose your sense of reality. You start to wonder if any of it really happened, if you really did those things, if it was all in your head. The legal settlement helped in a strange way. It was a piece of paper that said, yes, you did these things. Yes, they had value. Yes, you deserve something back. But a piece of paper can't make your mother look at you. A piece of paper can't make your sister call you on your birthday. A piece of paper can't undo the fact that you have been erased from the only family you ever had. I'm 31 years old now. I have my own small house with the weed-filled yard. I have a dog who loves me. I have a job that doesn't inspire me but doesn't destroy me. I have a few good friends who know parts of this story. Not all of it. It's too long and too sad, and nobody wants to hear someone complain about their family at brunch. So I keep most of it inside. I tell myself I'm better off. I tell myself I don't need people who only value me for what I can give them. I tell myself that $75,000 is a good start on a real retirement fund. But late at night when I can't sleep, I think about the porch swing. I think about how good it felt to hang that last rope and step back and see it finished. I think about how I sat on it that first evening and watched the sun go down and believed that everything I had done was worth it. I believed that love was something you built, something you maintained, something that held. I don't believe that anymore. Love is not a house. Love is not a swing. Love is not the roses you plant along the walkway. Love is what people do when you stop giving. And when I stopped giving, everyone just walked away. They didn't look back. They didn't wonder if I was okay. They just left me standing in the yard with my hands full of tools and my pockets empty and my heart wondering where everyone went. Sometimes I think about reaching out, sending a letter, showing up at Chloe's door, explaining one more time. But I don't, because I know what would happen. She would look at me with those eyes she's had since she was 12. The eyes that say, "You're too much, you're too heavy, you're too sad." And she would close the door, and I would have to walk away again. And I just don't have it in me to walk away anymore. So I stay here, in my little house with my dog and my weeds and my $75,000. I water my own plants now. I fix my own leaks. I hang my own pictures. It's not the life I imagined when I was 16 and determined to hold my family together, but it's mine, and nobody can give it away or take it from me or pretend it never existed. My mom gave their home as the wedding gift to my sister. They forgot everything I did for them, so I made them remember, and the remembering cost me everything I had left. But at least they can't say I never did anything for this family. At least now there's a piece of paper that proves it. At least now when I sit in the dark, I know I wasn't imagining it. I was there, I did those things, and I deserve more than a text message.